Hey everyone, Megan here. It has been so long since I last did a video update that I've actually moved out of the country and then moved back to the United States in that period of time. So I figured it was about time to do a bit of an update. So a lot has happened in the past few months. What you see behind me is a kind of messy office because I've just relocated back from Ireland to the United States. And none of my belongings have arrived yet, so I'm kind of living on a couch and using paper and plastic silverware and plates and just getting by and waiting till the rest of my clothing and cosplay equipment and so on. Furniture arrives. In regards to the big international move, as many of you know, I accepted a job overseas in Dublin, Ireland, earlier at the beginning of this year, and while it didn't work out, the company wasn't really a good culture fit for myself, I absolutely did not regret the decision. It was an incredible experience. Living and working overseas is something that I recommend to everyone. It was a life-changing experience, and I made so many friends and learned so much about cosplay internationally, and it was just absolutely wonderful being immersed in another culture, so no regrets. I am, however, very, very happy to be back at Crystal Dynamics and just kind of got thrown right into things and am preparing for the launch of Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris, which is on December 9th, so right into things when I moved back earlier this month. So one of the projects that I'm super excited about right now, and it has pretty much all of my attention outside of work, is that the charitable cosplay shop is actually live again. I kicked it off earlier this year. It was the first time that I've ever made prints of myself available, and every single penny that was not tied up in shipping and printing costs went to charity. And so we donated, I think, $2,600 to the Trevor Project back in April, I think, of this year. So I opened it again in time for the holidays, and I'm trying to do something bigger and better this time. I actually reached out to cosplayers across the globe and had them send me prints. So the great thing about this is now the charitable cosplay shop allows you to get prints from all of your favorite people, all of your favorite cosplayers, or there's print packs, there's calendars, there's original art, all this sorts of stuff in one place, and every single penny goes to charity. The charity this time is actually called Room to Read, and it's one that is a fantastic organization. It has 4 out of 4 stars on Charity Navigator, and it focuses on educational programming in developing countries. And what I really like about it is that it works really hard to ensure that the educational gap between young boys and girls doesn't grow, because a lot of times in developing countries, young girls are taken out of school earlier than boys so that they can help out at home and so on. And I just think that's a great cause. Education, libraries, that sort of stuff, fantastic across the board, and making sure that gap doesn't grow is just a bigger bonus, in my opinion. So if you want to go to, it's meganmarie.storenvy.com, and I will put it into the YouTube description down there. I please ask you to donate to even you can just donate. You can donate $5, $10, or pick up a print pack if you prefer a collectible. But let's really show people how generous the cosplay community can be. Last time I raised $2,500 with just my prints. And so I think that with the support of people across the world, you know, like Abby Darkstar and Lisa Lu Hu and Yaya Han and so on, we should be able to raise an exceptional amount of money. So please spread the word. The shop closes November 24th, which gives me just enough time to get it out, get all the prints printed and shipped out the door at the same time that I'm trying to manage the launch of Lara Croft and the Guardian of Light, Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris, which I knew I was getting into, but I did it anyway. So let's make it worth it. Let's make that worth it. So another thing I wanted to do in this video is take the opportunity to connect a little bit more and share a little bit more about myself with you guys. On my Facebook page, I asked if people have questions and sort of an ask me anything, and for the most part, I'm really open to answering pretty much everything as long as it's done or posed in a respectful manner. And you guys had some pretty interesting questions, so I'm going to go through them now, and maybe I'll try to do this on like a bi-weekly basis, every couple of weeks, go through some of your questions. Alright, so Bara asks, what is your favorite convention expo memory as a cosplay guest and as well working? I get to go to a ton of conventions I'm very fortunate in that both my job and my hobby allow me to travel a lot and to go to conventions around the world, so it's very hard to choose. But I would say my first big memory, that it was sort of kind of a hybrid, it indicated this shift in cosplay, in being recognized for cosplay for the first time, was when I was invited to Paris for the Gears of War 3 launch, and I got to dress up as Anya Stroud for the launch, and it was really an incredible experience. I was a huge fangirl of Gears of War 3. I actually got to go on the cover story for a game when I worked at Game Informer, and as soon as I saw that Anya was all suited up, I'm like, I'm making this costume, there's no way around it. And so when I was invited to come out and wear my costume for an official event, it was just one of those kind of mind-boggling experiences that I didn't understand how being passionate and being a geek and building something could make this amazing opportunity happen. And so it was really incredible that night spent posing with people and celebrating the game alongside them was wonderful. As far as just a general convention guest, I would say some of my best experiences have come from South America and Central America. I cannot wait to go back. I have had, and the Caribbean, I've had such a fantastic time at shows like SOFA and Anime Con, and the people are so exceptionally warm and welcoming, and the food is incredible, and the culture is just warm and interesting, and everybody there is they're so passionate about whatever it is, whether it's anime or video games or cosplay in general and so on, and it's just such a wonderful experience. And so I hope I get to go to more conventions down south a bit, because so far they've been really amazing. And in terms of work memories, this is going on really long, sorry. One of my favorite work memories that is tied to a convention is that I met up with a bunch of Tomb Raider fans in Paris for a convention, and afterwards we went to the Louvre, and that was my first time in the Louvre. And exploring the Louvre and walking through these rooms full of like ancient Egyptian artifacts was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. Getting to see those artifacts with other Tomb Raider fans who probably developed a passion for Egyptology because of Tomb Raider. It was just surreal and amazing and something I will never forget. So speaking of Paris and Parisians, Athena says, would you marry me and come live to the country of smelly cheese and good wine? Athena's a friend of mine. She's actually someone that I met for the first time at the Gears of War 3 event in Paris. I put out a little post saying, is there any cosplayer in Paris who can help me get into my costume? I can't do this alone. I really need help. And she responded, and we ran around and had so much fun that night, and we've been fast friends ever since. Every time I go to Paris, I see her now, and it's been wonderful. Athena, having been married once, which is something maybe some of you don't know, I'm not sure that that's something I'm interested in again. However, I would gladly move to Paris with you and have cheese and wine and celebrate cosplay all the time. So we'll have to work that into our future. Okay, time for a little bit more serious one. Ian Henson asks, you've touched on bad experiences you've had in the industry as a woman. Long term, do you see this becoming an easier industry for women, or as the horrific Gamergate seems to show, it'll only get worse? I think that it's a pretty heady topic for a quick video Q&A, and I love tackling difficult, tough questions. I don't like to shy away from them, but I tend to like to do them written out because it allows me the chance to collect my thoughts a bit more. But generally speaking, I'm going to say the short answer is that the first step towards real change is going to be acknowledging that there's a problem and really drawing attention to it. And I think that very, very few people in the game industry now could or would want to deny that there are issues with the treatment and representation of women in gaming. And I think that people are being more cognizant of what they do and what they say, even if something that they did was never maliciously intent, even if something they did never had malicious intent and it was just sort of a casual comment that made someone feel out of place. I think that people are really starting to think that over more. And I hope it's going to start to change. I do honestly believe it will. Alright, next question. Sean Fontaine asks, have you ever been interested in doing any voice acting, mocap acting, or even movie acting? Totally. I'm pretty much interested in anything that's going to give me a more holistic view of how games work. In the past, I've stepped in to do temp VO before. I do not try a British accent because that would be bad. and it'd be on record somewhere. Someone would have access to that file and could blackmail you with my terrible accents. So, no. And it was kind of intimidating the first few times I did that. I would just read the lines, and eventually I started really trying to push myself and, you know, run in place or make sure that I was really giving a performance. So it's been really fun. I've also done some posing for renders early on where helps someone figure out how a dynamic pose should be and how they should pose with a weapon, and then they send it off and start developing the concept further. And I definitely want to do mocap work in the future. It's something that I'd like to. As far as legitimate acting, I think that maybe being an extra would be really fun. I would love to understand what it's like on a movie set, but I'm not entirely sure I'm interested in acting as a whole. It's just not where I want to be. I want to work in the game industry, and so I'd love to see how it is and how it works, but then just be able to walk away from it and keep pursuing what I am. A surprise donut, it appears. You know, actually, this is a good chance to jump to one of my later questions, which is from Ben, the bee, who asks if we can have some awkward dancing with the kitties. Are you ready for this? Should we do some awkward dancing? Am I supposed to dance awkwardly, or is the kitty supposed to dance awkwardly? Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Okay, I'm sorry, Donut. That's Donut dancing awkwardly. I'm not going to dance awkwardly because the internet is forever. Alright, bye, Donut. Next question. Manu asks, let's see, I'm a French model living in China. I'd like to know how you became a geek model and if you've ever been to Asia. I tend to not consider myself a model because I feel like it implies some sort of professional vocation, and I really just do it for fun. There was a period of time in the end of high school and the beginning of college that I was interested in maybe seeing if I could make some money doing like very light commercial modeling, like handbags and, you know, walking down the street pretending how happy you are about everything, talking on my cell phone. But it wasn't something that one, it was very hard to get into, and also it wasn't something that was very fulfilling on an artistic level for me. So it was kind of the same time that I started attending conventions. I actually started making costumes for photo shoots because I was trying to find a way to collaborate with these photographers that was a bit more interesting, that was relevant to my geek interests. So yeah, that's kind of how I approached it, is that I had these working relationships with photographers from photo shoots that we'd done in the past, and I was like, hey, how about I come as Wonder Woman next time? Test out that new lighting equipment of yours, or go try some outside in this location, and it just developed from there. In terms of if you're interested in actually some tips for learning how to do time for CD or time for print with photographers through sites like Model Mayhem and so, I could actually post a link to one of my tutorials in the comments, and that shares how I started working with photographers. But it's much more commonplace now than it was 10 or so years ago, when it was hard to find people that were willing to trade their services. And in terms of being to Asia, I have been to both Russia and Japan. So I would love to go back, though. There's so many other places I want to explore. I want to explore the entire world, basically, but Asia has a special place in my heart. So hopefully I'll be back next year. My next question is, what is your favorite level of the Tomb Raider series and why? I would never be able to answer this difficult question. Good luck, mwahahaha. From Isan? Isan? Yes. That's actually pretty easy. And although that I love pretty much all of the phases of Tomb Raider throughout the history, you know, the core, the crystal, and then the modern reboot all have their fantastic qualities that draw me in for different reasons. Tomb Raider 2, The Wreck of the Maria Doria, is going to be forever my favorite level. There was something that was just so eerie and wonderful about it. And I was also very obsessed with the Titanic at the time, and so exploring the shipwreck and avoiding sharks and barracudas, which I had an unnatural fear of barracudas then in my lake in Minnesota after that. It'll just forever be my favorite. It was such a wonderful level. Okay, Kyle Letterman, we go way back. Kyle asks, what's your current favorite beer? So he probably asks because I used to drink a lot more beer. I don't drink much in the way of beer anymore because I wanted to get in shape. I had beer more regularly in college and cut it out so that I could get in shape. However, when I see Sapporo, I can't really turn it down. So Sapporo is kind of like my cheating beer. If I'm going out and having a beer with friends, I'll usually pick up that. Alright, Nico asks, if you had the chance to do your own video game, including all the resources and enough money to go wild, what would it be and what genre? So, I'm not going to tell. I'm sorry, I'm not usually secretive, but I'm not telling. Little known fact, my boyfriend and I actually did start our own indie game company together. Downward Viral, which is the company that he now runs. We started it back when I was at Game Informer. And we kicked around some concepts, got to some early, demos of a couple of mobile games. Then when I moved to Crystal Dynamics, it got a bit too hard to continue doing both, and I didn't want to hold him back because of the commitments that I had elsewhere with the day job. And so he took over the company entirely, and that's when he successfully kickstarted Z, the digital trading card game. And it has, it's been a real wild ride for him, and it's been really fun to watch. Eventually, I would like to start making my own games again. Not saying anytime soon, it could be in the distant future, but it's a goal that I do have for at some point in my life to move into production and help work with designers and so on to get an interesting game out there. The games that tend to appeal to me, and the 2 or 3 that I have fleshed out already, tend to be more of the indie sort of smaller games with deeper meanings, and that's what really appeals to me. I love playing AAA games, but I would like to personally help create games that have some deeper form of personal expression, and so that's something that I hope to do in the future. So I can't spoil it now, but I hope they're going to be really cool. I think they are. I like the ideas. Alright, next question. Kelly P. asks, is there a chance for a new cosplay feature on the blog anytime soon? If you're asking about the cos blog for Game Informer, I feel terrible, but I think that one's just kind of ended. I have such little free time now that it's just very difficult, but I should talk to them about someone else taking over and give them all the files and art and so on. If you're talking about on my website, I hope soon. I'm actually just talking to someone tonight about revamping my website as a whole, and getting up to date on blogs, because there's about 7 or 8 costume construction blogs that I owe that I'm really far behind on. So I hope soon. I hope. Seasmon says, your most demanding cosplay or something you always wanted to cosplay but is nearly impossible to do. What is that? So I have a couple. One that I would really like to revisit is Grace from Soulfire. Dragonflies have a really deep personal meaning to me. I have a dragonfly tattooed on my back that I got after my little brother passed away as sort of a tribute. And Grace is a dragonfly character, and so I've always wanted to pay tribute to her properly. I did one costume before, but I really struggled with the wings and wasn't overly happy with the final result. So I want to rebuild her costume and rebuild her wings and really make them look like these beautiful dragonfly wings. The other one is the Borg Queen from The Next Generation. And the main reason I'm holding off on this one is I know I'd have to hire a fantastic makeup artist, but I know some, and do the bald cap and all that. But I want to find a way to make it look like my upper bust is separating from my torso. Just some sort of an illusion so you can see a little bit of the spinal cord and look like it's being lowered down. I know it's ridiculous, but that was such a awe-inspiring moment in the movie to me, and so I want to find a way to pay tribute to that. So someday, if you have any ideas, feel free to put them down there. Someday I'll make that happen. Tina asks, do you miss me yet? Tina is Cyanide Kisses. She is a wonderful person who I met when I lived in Dublin, and her and Wade's Whittle Workshop, her boyfriend, showed me all over Dublin. They showed me where to buy costume supplies and where to get Warbler and all this sort of stuff. They really made me feel at home. They helped me move stuff and were just so fantastic. And yes, I do miss you guys so much. I'm so glad that I was able to make friends during this experience. So thank you. Alright, James asks, what is your guilty pleasure show, the one that you're embarrassed to say you're a fan of? It honestly used to be Supernatural. Then I found out that all my friends basically loved it too, so I stopped feeling bad about it. I have a habit of picking shows that I haven't seen before, that I've never watched an episode of, and they're very long-running series, and I watch them while I work on costumes. So sometimes I'll judge how long it takes to make a costume by how many seasons of a TV show I get through. So I picked Supernatural, I think while I was working on Castlevania, and I got through like 5 seasons of it. And I picked it because I thought it was kind of a throwaway, silly show that I could turn on and walk out of the room and go spray paint something inside, not worry about pausing it. And I ended up loving it. So every time I left the room, I'd have to pause it and come run back in. And then I just started watching it when I wasn't done working something. And I would say maybe, what is that? Was it Storage Wars? What was like the TV show where they would go into like abandoned storage lockers or storage spaces? That was actually something I really liked too, because it was kind of like this weird competitive antique roadshow, and you never know what they would find, even if it was scripted or manufactured. It was still kind of fun. So that's definitely like a guilty pleasure show. Okay, so George says, been a fan for a while, thank you, and had the pleasure of meeting you during the Greek Legends event. Oh, that was just awesome, it was amazing. Any plans on revisiting Greece for a shoot maybe, and cosplaying more of the Marvel DC universe? Thanks, and keep being awesome, thank you. I actually did want to try to take my Warrior Wonder Woman to the Acropolis in Greece when I was in Athens, but I was told you can't shoot there. So I do plan to return eventually to Greece. I absolutely want to. One day off was not enough. I want to go and visit the islands. After Tomb Raider launched last time, Bastion and I took a much needed vacation and we went to Hawaii together, and I actually would like my next major vacation, like legitimate vacation, as in turning off my cell phone and all that, to be to some of the Greek islands. So I hope to come back. The food and the people was just amazing. So as far as shooting, I love collaborating with photographers when I travel. It's one of my favorite things to do because I think it's a lot better than a postcard, having, you know, a way to see the beauty of the country and to work with a local who knows the location is a lot of fun. In terms of cosplaying more Marvel and DC universe, I do have plans for one of the anime-inspired Batgirls. But generally speaking, the reason I don't do a ton from the DC or Marvel universe is because I grew up reading a lot of the less mainstream books. A lot of Vertigo, Image, Top Cow, I suppose. Even though they are quite popular, you know, it was the Marvel and DC universes were a little bit intimidating to me because I didn't know where to start. They had such like seasoned characters that went back decades and decades and decades, and being a bit of a lore completionist, I had a hard time jumping in. However, I am going back now, and I do read. I'm reading Miss Marvel now, the new Miss Marvel, and Captain Marvel, and I read a lot of like standalone Bat books like The Long Halloween and The Killing Joke and so on. So I am catching up on those, in addition to continuing to read pretty much anything Vertigo, anything by Neil Gaiman, and so on. So who knows? Who knows? And obviously, video game characters are kind of like my forte. It's what I really love cosplaying from. Other than, all right, this one, Aaron Johnson asks, other than video games, what other industry would you want to work in? I honestly don't know if I could work in any industry but gaming. I've wanted to work in video games since I was a kid. It's been my single-minded focus since I was very young, and that's why I went to school for graphic design and journalism and mass communications, because I knew that I wanted to work for Game Informer magazine, and I knew that I either wanted to write for them or help design the magazine. And that if that didn't work out, that I could be a UI designer for a game studio and help design the in-game menus and so on. So I don't know if I could ever do anything else. If I did, I think it would probably end up being related to travel and charity, some sort of global charitable initiative that I could travel and help do things on local levels all over the world. Traveling is something, it's probably my other big passion. In terms of gaming, cosplay, and travel, which I'm very fortunate, as I said, that gaming and cosplay allows me to travel, because I could be a nomad. I could just wander the world and drink in every inch of it, because getting to understand and experience different cultures is something that I value almost above anything else. So it's kind of an ambiguous answer, but sorry. All right, Sergio Cabrera asks, serious question, I have a new kitty, Dr. Strawberry Velvet, and the nefarious Captain Litterpants. What are the two names? I've narrowed it down to that. Which shall be the victor for this little one? I think Captain Litterpants. I think, like, anytime you name a cat nefarious something, I think that's amazing. You should post a photo. I want to see a picture of Captain Litterpants. All right. Bobby Thompson asks, do you get starstruck? I don't often. I've worked with a good deal of celebrities and met a lot of talented people at conventions, and I tend to have a mantra that everybody has talent, and some people just have more visible forms of talent. Actors and artists and singers and so on, they have talent that they can share in a broader sense with the world. And I prefer to treat people that way, that they're just very talented individuals. But I think scientists are incredibly talented, and mathematicians and so on, and architects. So I think talent just sort of manifests itself in many ways. But I did once get starstruck, and it was with Michael Turner, who was he was the reason I got into comics. Being a fan of Tomb Raider my whole life, not my whole life, I was 12 when it came out, so most of my life. I walked into a comic store once and I saw Tomb Raider cover by Michael Turner, and I was blown away. I didn't know that there were comic books for Tomb Raider, and I knew that I needed to read it, and I picked it up, and I fell so much in love with his art and his depictions of Lara Croft that I started reading the spin-offs, or the crossovers, so Witchblade and Fathom and so on, and that really introduced me to these amazing stories in the cosplay, or in the comic book universe. And so from there it just became a passion. Comic books became a passion of mine. And so I did meet him once, the year before he passed away, actually. And I had a friend introduce me, so someone personally introduced me to him. And I was waiting for him to finish up a conversation with someone else, and I was very nervous. And then my friend introduced me, and before I could say anything, I just started crying. And I don't do that often. And it caught me, it was very embarrassing, to be honest, and it caught me so off guard. But he was so wonderful about it. He just gave me a big hug, and I tried to tell him through tears that he had inspired me to get into comic books, and that to start reading comic books, and that everything he did was just so impressive. And yeah, he was wonderful. He gave me a big hug, and he said thank you, and he made a habit to, address me by name, and he was just absolutely wonderful. And you could tell that he was a very humble individual, and the industry is missing a great talent without him. So if that's going to be the one time that I kind of get a little bit starstruck, I think it's worth it. Okay. And what was your favorite thing about working at Game Informer? John Barry asks. This will be the last question because I think this is running really long. In general, I think that working for Game Informer was fantastic. It was wonderful. But what I liked most of all was really feeling like I was on the front line of innovations. When you're sitting there at press conferences or waiting for an interview or getting a heads up on a big announcement, you get to see how the industry is changing in a big way and be there to discuss it with people as it's happening. And that was really cool. So when you work at a studio, you often put your head down and you focus on your projects. And sometimes that means having blinders towards other things. Not entirely. You need to keep up with the industry as a whole to make sure that your products stay relevant. But in games journalism and at Game Informer, you got to cover such a large breadth of stuff that it was really wonderful to feel like I was really on the cutting edge of big industry changes. So it was wonderful. I think that's it. I think I've been talking way too much. So hopefully soon I will have more videos. If you guys like this, I'll do more in the future. I'll try to have a more interesting setup. I'm sorry that this is kind of boring. And also I'll be doing some other fun videos soon. I have partnered up with Nerdblock, which I hope you guys have heard of. It's a subscription toy service, a monthly one. And I can't talk about it entirely yet, but it came about because we're collaborating along with other cosplayers on a really epic cosplay offering that you'll get to hear about next year. Maybe it'll start teasing it sooner. I'm not sure. So I'll have some unboxing videos soon as well. So, all right, that's it. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks, guys.